Hi everyone, this is K8s Infra meeting and the first of the year 2023. So I welcome everyone to this meeting, and I just want to remind everyone that this meeting is under the code of conduct. So I invite everyone to be kind to each other. So happy new year to everyone, and welcome to any new people in this call. By the way, is anyone want to introduce itself before we start?
Oh, I will introduce myself, but I think almost everyone knows me. So, hi, I'm Jeffrey Sika. I work for the CNCF. I'm later on in the agenda, but I figured I would just make everyone smile and say hi now.
Anyone else?
Hey, I'm Jay. I'm a Sagittarius. I like long walks on the beach. I don't work at AWS anymore, just for those of you who don't know that. I left at the end of November last year. Yeah, I'm just self-employed, doing that thing. So anyway, good to see you all.
Anyone? Okay, do we have a note taker? Because I forgot to mention that before we start. Anyone want to volunteer as a note taker?
Dibs raised his hand.
Okay, okay, thank you. I would say Teams or EP. I'll put the link in the doc. I'm gonna share my screen so we go over the billing report. I think the one thing I would like to do for billing report, and that's more like something I didn't mention in the meetings notes, I'm trying to basically get the cost for all the cloud provider we currently use and put that in the annual report, because annual report is coming. So I think that's an AI I need to put somewhere into. Anyway, I'm just gonna go over monthly report. Let's see what we had spent last month. Yes, and Jeffrey, like basically,
it's the SIG annual report, right?
Yeah, the SIG annual report, not the Kubernetes annual report. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the spend for December of last year. I see we kind of grow in terms of artifact registry, which means people start to use the new registry, which is a good thing. I don't see much related to that. We still have K8s here. If I check compared to the month of November, wait. Okay,
While
so
you do
we
that,
have.
Can I ask questions?
Yeah.
All right. So the previous one, or line item 5, that is currently indicating spend based on registry.k8s.io and not k8s.gcr.io.
No, that's basically because that's there are two costs here: the storage cost,
right,
and the egress cost.
Got it. Okay.
Arno, I think there's one other point that might be confusing for people who haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
the networking line item, that's actually not all the networking costs. It shows up because we're using Cloud CDN on artifacts.k8s.io. Networking charges specific to just using cloud storage on its own just show up under cloud storage as the service.
Yeah,
instead of
so
networking, because it's not a network service. Network service would be Cloud CDN. So that first line includes the actual cost of storage and egress for the GCR and for the objects in artifacts.k8s.io, which is a subdomain experiment we have that has like K-ops binaries. The egress costs under network that show up under network are just from the Cloud CDN thing that's on artifacts.k8s.io only. So that's not representative of like all the networking cost of cloud storage things. Most of that shows up under that first item.
And kind of the thing that I was curious about is if there is some sort of view, if not now, eventually, where we can easily show what chunk of the budget is going towards k8s.gcr.io versus registry.k8s.io. If that separation is even possible, or if there's like ways where we can show metrics that registry.k8s.io is being adopted more or being transitioned more. Because I think like 3 to 5 months from now, we're going to need those metrics. So I want to kind of make sure that that gets sorted out now.
Well, I think we can do that, but not in this report. Like basically the easy way for us to basically identify that is basically say, okay, because those two workloads are in different projects. So we identify the project to basically match the billing. We say, okay, K8s.gcr.io the spend is on the project K8s artifact prod. And we know it's there. We basically know, okay, that's the only project where the cost is currently happening. And for registry.k8s.io, everything happening in another project. So that separation of billing per project help us identify it easily identify adoption, but we cannot be granular about metrics because artifact registry metrics are really limited.
Well, so if that's actually the opposite. So if we split a couple things out of K8s artifacts prod, then we'd be able to just by GCP project and say, okay, we know these GCP projects already are specific to our registry.k8s.io, and we could say this is how much it's costing us. But cost is kind of a poor proxy for adoption because we can change things about the how the actual cost breaks down over time. We can hand collect, we can go to like the Cloud Run page for the production service and give you like what's the current QPS, but we can't do this as readily for K8s.gcr.io because we only have that sort of logs on the object storage, which is not all the API calls. If we want to know what's the QPS to K8s.gcr.io, we actually have to go ask the GCR team because that's just not actually something that's exposed. And it's not something they're going to add exposing because that's a legacy product.
That's gross and not what I wanted to hear, but okay.
I mean, I've pulled them before. We know people on the team. We can ask them to go give us like, hey, what's the QPS for K8s.gcr.io? And it's not a huge problem, but it's not something we're going to be doing at like every meeting. There's not like a public endpoint for that. You can do audit logs on the actual storage object calls, but that's apples to oranges. So
that's fair. Okay. I don't want us to tangent too much because this is billing specific and mine is more of a usage question, but I do think in the future as we're going to need to be able to show that like cost is getting reduced and shifting and being able to show that it's also like traffic going to registry.k8s.io and some of the other things would be helpful. But ultimately it's usage, not billing that I'm worried about.
We can see the cost switching over fairly clearly once you're familiar with this, Bill. You can say that like, okay, K8s artifacts prod, that's not registry.k8s.io, but the like Cloud Run project and the artifact registry, like those have their own projects.
But Ben,
Got it.
Ben, if we were able to see egress versus the storage costs,
Yeah.
we actually could correlate a decrease in the egress costs to an increase in adoption of the registry K8s.io, AWS S3 mirrors, right? Because a lot of that egress cost is coming from AWS instances calling out to GCR, right?
Yeah.
And pulling data.
I think what we want to see is we want to see usage going up on the registry so that we know that adoption is happening. And then independently, we want to see costs going down regardless. And if cost isn't going down, then we want to see, where isn't it going down? So we would just kind of naturally expect that it should be shifting over to like AR and things. So something that we might find.
Right, but unless we see a breakdown of egress versus storage, the storage may be going up quite a bit and the egress may be going down and we don't see a difference in total cost. That's what I was referring to. So like if we could see, out of that 180,000, 120,000 is egress and 60,000 is storage, like broken out. And then we can see, okay, egress is going down, but
we don't have that. We don't have that like handy currently as a metric, but we can also tell you that like that's relatively constant. Like the amount of storage we have is mostly static, and then we're just adding like the whatever rate we're adding new images. So we do have like that goes up, but like from past exploration, we know that it's dominated by egress. So as we see it move over from the old to the new, the other thing I point out is just getting people on a registry at K8s.io. That means whether or not the cost is going down, we're fully in control to shift costs around. Whereas while it's on K8s.GCR.io, we don't have any control over that. We can't do anything to mitigate costs. If we find that registry.K8s.io isn't as cost effective as we want, like we can quickly roll out differences. For example, right now, before we had the 3 million donation, we said, okay, Amazon traffic will only be Amazon IPs. We could flip it around and say, Amazon traffic is when it's not GCP IPs, because since we have a copy in GCP, we should just route GCP there and avoid egress. But if it's not, then like let's route to Amazon for blobs. Maybe we're not detecting Amazon IPs enough, or maybe we have a lot of traffic outside of it or something like that. But we're a little bit ahead of ourselves if we haven't actually moved the traffic over yet. And that again, we don't have public, but I can tell you that that's the case. It's still not much. Last I checked, I had gotten the GCR team to get me like the monthly average, and it was something like 2,500 QPS. And I haven't seen registry.K8s.io break like 400 yet anytime I've checked. So there's still a lot of traffic going to the, well, I mean, we actually even have traffic still going to Google containers, but that again isn't billed to us and isn't a concern. But just to get some idea, like it can be many years later, we're probably not going to get everyone to move, and that isn't a realistic plan.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think there are two aspects to the GFA question. Is like metrics related to consumption, like basically QPS and storage. We can provide in some extent those metrics because they are part of GCP, but QPS for the load balancer or underlying on the traffic, it's internal to Google. So that's going to be unlikely we get access to that. And for cost, I think it's fine. We have mostly of all the metrics related costs we are looking for.
It'll also be more obvious on registry.K8s.io because we'll be able to see like, this is artifact registry, this is cloud run. We have things more broken up there. It's not all tossed into one GCP project and one service. We'll see costs hit the redirector, will see costs for the things. So like I can tell you right now, the redirect service, half of the cost is logging, and we should probably turn down the logs once we're more confident in it.
Yeah, we plan to do that.
But it's also a small cost comparatively.
I think, Jeffrey, we can follow up your question later, async. So I think my AI will be to put you as viewer of the entire GCP org. That's going to be easier for you to basically look. And I can point you to different metrics we have right now.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Any question related to billing for GCP?
For the new folks, I also want to quickly point out that there's a bunch more billing that isn't built to us, that like isn't directly our concern, but as we go to migrate any of those things over, there's actually an even larger spend on internal Google currently. We don't have a dashboard for that, and I mean, because the focus is on migrating things over, but last we checked, it was something closer to 4. But we have some good room to, most of that is again serving binaries. And I think that's currently because the project is just using a GCS bucket and hasn't been paying much attention to that. And that like a single bucket in a single region is not cost effective. So for egress purposes. Something to keep in mind as you're looking at this cost, the project has a bunch of other spend that is not this public GCP bill, and not just on GCP, on like Amazon and other places. But this is the one that we've been most constrained on.
Anything else?
Because the chat logs don't get preserved, I want to echo that Justin has a comment that it looks like the storage for K8s artifacts prod is like under $100 a month. But the actual just storing objects isn't costing us a lot. We have a like relatively small amount of data, like maybe a terabyte last time I looked at image blobs, that is being served at, you know, massive scale compared to that.
Yeah, it was like 1.6 terabytes.
Yeah, so just storing a terabyte isn't actually costing us hardly anything compared to the millions of dollars we're spending on like egress.
Well, we can just, there is a calculator public. You can just use the number of terabyte we have now for GCS and trying to get an estimate. We are GCS storage is really, really cheap, so I would not be worried about that right now. Okay, let's move on. I think it's time for the open discussion. Do we have Ricardo in the call?
I don't see him.
Okay, we're gonna skip this bit. I talked to him about this, so yeah, we're gonna put that in the next meeting. Which means Shwana, it's now up to you.
Great. Hi, everybody. Just wanted to announce a few things. One is you all know GP by now, but GP is being assigned to be the CNCF point of contact and technical lead from CNCF to help support the migration to multi-cloud. So please reach out to GP to coordinate support from foundation and contractors. II is going to remain involved and help support. We've also engaged Kubernetes, who's going to be attending meetings and helping provide strategic support and some help with implementation as well. Are the folks from Kubernetes on the line?
Hi, I'm here. I'm Mario. I work for Kubernetes and I was already in a couple of the last SIG Infra meetings.
Great, thanks, Mario. Also, we put together a proposed timeline for major milestones for the various phases of the transition to multi-cloud. This is just a proposal to help at least help guide the targets that we want to be that Kubernetes and II and CNCF are going to be trying to help support SIG K8s Infra. In the meeting, the leadership of SIG K8s Infra at KubeCon in Detroit, asked if the foundation and our contractors could just take a more engaged and active role in helping support all of you. We listened, and we're trying to provide just some more organization from our end. And so we put together this proposed timeline, and we welcome comments and feedback on whether this aligns with what the SIG is thinking.
Jana, would you like us to go through it? Especially there is some annotations in there of who's responsible, who's watching, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why don't we start at the top? So we've split this into several different phases, and all of these phases can happen in parallel. Ideally, they are happening in parallel, but we just thought it would be helpful to think of the type of work that's being done in several different categories and buckets. So one is focused on artifact and container distribution. So that's how we defined phase one. And the hope is, here, I've actually, let me open on my screen because I'm having a little hard time following there.
I will be slow, sorry. I went too fast.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, why don't we stay in phase one for now? So Kubernetes is going to, with fresh eyes, and Kubernetes has, of course, helped many migrations to multi-cloud. They're going to be spending the next couple of weeks just taking with fresh eyes, taking a look at the work that's already been done by SIG K8s Infra and II, and provide and letting you know if they have any suggestions for changes. And by mid-February, our hope is that SIG K8s Infra and cloud providers could provide input if there are any recommended changes. And then a week after that, but third week of February, they'll help put together a more detailed technical project plan and timeline that has sufficient detail to track to issues in GitHub. And I understand that there are a lot of already issues and tickets already in GitHub. So this is just to to reflect whatever hasn't already been put in GitHub. And then the thinking is that in March, by late March, the proposed architecture, the implementation could be completed. And then after that, there would be a CNCF would publish a blog post just announcing that this phase is completed. So I'm particularly interested in, does this timeline seem realistic given the progress that's already been made? Does it seem too aggressive?
And maybe
Everybody
to
speak
add,
up at once.
and maybe to add here, we want to help you, so we want to support you, and we value every input that we can get from you, because we basically need to get an overview, and we also open for any recommendations that already have been made or plans that already have been made but could not put to work because of missing resources, time, and stuff like this.
And the other thing that I'll add is a bunch of this timeline and like different side conversations. At this point, we want to make sure that this is fixed. We have strong opinions, but they are weakly held given there, is a better path forward for all of us. So like, this is meant to be collaborative, not a giant hammer.
Right, and if this timeline is not helpful and SIG K8s Infra wants to come up with his own timeline, that's absolutely welcome. We're just trying to be helpful and make sure there's alignment so that we're all working towards the same goalposts on a similar timeline.
My feeling, Joanna, is that we'll have to update this timeline as we go along, as we we don't know how all of us are going to work and what speed and how the work will evolve over time, especially the the recommendations in 1.2 will help us figure out the rest of the things after that comes after.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. this is yeah, absolutely not intended just to be a tool, not intended to be something that is committed to fully upfront. It could be adjusted, and we can have regular check-ins based on it. Okay, well, and you can continue to make. I understand this is a new document to many of you, so feel free over the next over the upcoming weeks to add comments to the document if you've been if you're leadership, and if you don't have access to comment, feel free to send GP and me a note in Slack, and we'll take your comments into consideration. And then there's phase 2. So let's go over phase 2. Again, this is not intended to. This is intended to happen in parallel with phase 1.
Joanna, before we go to phase 2, can we walk through the RACI framework and
Oh, sure.
that everybody knows what that is talking about?
Yeah, so RACI, it's an acronym, stands for responsible. So who's going to be doing the work on this task? Accountable means who's accountable for completion of it, and therefore usually is going to be the person who approves it and signs off on it. Who's going to be consulted before that work or task is completed or finalized, and then who needs to be kept informed. So any questions about the terminology? All right, if we could go back to phase 1, I'll walk through the RACIs for phase 1 tasks. So we have asked, and again, if just let us know what, if you have suggestions for what would be more helpful, but we've asked Kubernetes to take a look at the work that's already been done and advise if there are any recommended changes. So Kubernetes is going to be responsible for that task. CNCF is going to oversee that task. And of course, SIG K8s Infra, II, and the cloud credit donors are going to be consulted. And then the next task is really to review the recommendations, provide feedback, and then decide what recommendations to incorporate in the final architecture design. That we see as a SIG K8s Infra tasks. SIG K8s Infra is also, very much the decision maker in that. But the others who are going to be impacted would also be consulted along with CNCF. And then 1.3 and 1.4, this is really around technical project management, making sure there is a more detailed list of tasks, engineering tasks that have to be completed in order for the work to be done. And Kubernetes has offered to create that detailed project plan and timeline. CNCF will help oversee that. And of course, SIG K8s Infra, the cloud credit donors, and other participants would be consulted on that. And I see a typo there, which I'll fix later. Kubernetes doesn't need to be listed twice. And then we move to implementation, and who's going to be responsible for different tasks. That will be reflected in the detailed project plan and timeline, and then the individual issues and tickets that are opened in GitHub. And that is going to be, that's community open source work with support from contractors. So the details of that will be determined later. And then we'd like to publish a blog post at the end of this announcing that this phase of the work has been done. And we'd like to engage Kubernetes to prepare the first draft, and then with input and feedback from others before CNCF publishes. Any questions or comments about the phase 1 RACI?
I'll probably channel Ben and ask for the 1.5. Usually we kind of like figure out like who's available, how much time can they work on, that sort of thing. So where do you see folks coming from to help with the tasks?
So we as Kubernetes will also bring in engineers to work on the tasks itself. So we are not only consulting there, we are also helping in the development of the implementation. And we have some people that work at Kubernetes that are already active contributors to various parts of the Kubernetes ecosystem.
Okay, sounds good, Mario. So let's add that, like, in addition to like the known people on the call who work in this stuff, mostly, but quite a few of us have the full-time jobs, and there is limited amount of time, so we'll need additional help to do this. And thanks for doing that, Mario, for sure.
So yeah, we'll have conversations about that. I'm not quite sure what you mean by adding to the is there language you wanted to add to the proposed timeline doc?
We don't have RACI framework for that item, so we should probably, we have RACI for everything else. For 1.5, we don't have it.
Well, the reason why is because it's going to be at the individual task level. So there's going to be a different, there'll be different people responsible for different tasks. So your cloud providers, their assigned FTEs are going to be responsible for, certain things that happen in the cloud providers. There's going to be some tasks that community members who participate in SIG K8s Infra are going to handle, and there are going to be some tasks that are going to be assigned to II, and some tasks that Kubernetes is going to be responsible for. So it's rather complex, and I was just thinking that when we get to the point where we have a detailed project plan, we can develop the RACI at the task level.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. So let's talk about phase 2, which again can happen in parallel with phase 1. At the same time that Kubernetes is reviewing the work that's already been done for container and artifact distribution, they're also going to be evaluating the work that's already been done for transitioning to multi-cloud for PROW and CI, and giving advice on whether they see any opportunities for improvement. That'll be early February when we're expecting their recommendations, and then there will be a month to review those recommendations, discuss, get consensus, and then finalize the design. And then these March 7th is when we would aim to have a detailed project plan and timeline for phase 2. And all this in terms of the RACI mirrors what we talked about already for phase 1 in terms of the recommendations, the review and discussion, and then developing a detailed project plan and timeline. And then out of that would come, issues and tickets created in GitHub for the PROW and CI migration. And then if we could scroll down to see 2.5 and 2 through 2.8. Thank you. Mid-April is when we would hope to stand up the multi-cloud PROW and begin the migration to the new PROW. And again, more specific task assignments will be included when there's a detailed project plan and timeline. And then shortly after that, I should fix the dates here because there's the notification is going to happen sooner than the completion. So we notify the community that they have until July 15th to migrate to the new PROW cluster, and here's how you do it. So the notification would actually happen in April after the multi-cloud PROW is stood up. But then we would aim to complete the transition by July 15th, and that date was chosen based on the code freeze of release 1.28.
Why those specific dates?
We felt trying to make things coincide with a Kubernetes release code freeze. Wow. Made more sense. It's more likely that if we do it during code freeze and something goes wrong, we can kind of back things up, and guess what? The code isn't being changed. The only thing that's really happening are either really important fixes or people trying to test their CI. Seemed like a good time to do this.
So the other one was I have a feeling that we are going to keep our current pro and like let it be like the master thing that sends out jobs to the other pros that are running elsewhere. Maybe we'll end up something like that. So I don't see us like shutting down the current pro, but we'll be somehow one way or another either migrating the jobs directly or setting up our pro to distribute the jobs out. We'll be doing something like that, I feel. And we haven't talked about it enough to come up with like a design at this point.
No, but I think you and I are thinking the same thing. I had this vision of there's one main prow and it's essentially delegating jobs to other prows, n number of prows, and guess what? Those n number of prows can be in whatever cloud providers we want.
Right. Yeah, and then we also have to talk about the test grid because we'll need a single test grid that stitches all these things together too.
Yep.
And I think we'll need some deeper design, and maybe we'll need some engagement with the test grid team in Google that is doing some of this stuff. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I don't know if now it's the right time, but I definitely have thoughts about like the technical portions here. I think maybe though that this is just sort of like a high level timeline on which things are being worked on, and it might not be the most important to have exactly correct like the technical like which part of prow is multi-cloud or that sort of thing.
Yeah, so to give maybe a little bit of insight, also why the CNCF talked to us is for Kubernetes and for Kube1, our both open source tools that we created, we actually have a multi-cloud prow environment already up and running, and we want to give you some insights into this so that you can maybe utilize on the structure there, and yeah, that we can implement some of the stuff that already is in place.
Right. The way we've been doing this, Mario, is we are. It's like changing the engine on an airplane, right? So we are trying to do that model where we are not waiting for something else to be completely ready, and we are iterating with the existing systems and like extending it outwards to all the other things, to include all the other things. So we are making incremental progress over time. Rather than a big bang, hey, there's a new pro, everybody go there kind of thing. So that's a model we've been following so far, and that
I can understand. Yeah. I can totally understand it. Yeah.
Can we not set a definitive date for moving prow? Because doing that in code freeze is extremely risky, and the revert may not be successful.
I don't know see it is right now. This is like it's telling us what comes after what, rather than exactly the dates. I don't know if we'll be able to make all the dates, and we don't even know the exact schedule for upcoming releases, and we only know when the current release is done. So
that's why I'm saying we should not be too strict about the dates and basically say, oh, we need to notify a community at some point about progress and decide about when we want to do the migration, because the comment here is we do that during code freeze. So and I'm not really.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm gonna channel myself and say I have a feeling we're bike shedding on the wrong thing.
Yep.
As long as we the CNCF can say the dates are flexible, but this is definitely the roadmap that we want to try and follow, and we don't want to blow out the dates by like a year, I think we can move on, right?
Yep.
I think we should communicate at some point, though, that there are some expectations around dates within the project for changing the infra. With my SIG testing hat on, we're more careful as we go into code freeze and then especially test freeze. Those are actually aimed at things in the Kubernetes repo, but we tend to, for anything that we think might be a risky change, we tend to extend test freeze, at least, which follows shortly after code freeze, to like Prow itself and like the CI infra and things, so that we're not being too disruptive to the rest of the project. So we don't necessarily, I think we don't necessarily need to like change this timeline here or whatever, but as people start to work on these things and are trying to like, I don't know, like if folks at Kubernetes are trying to hit dates, it's worth knowing that like there will be some level of the project going, okay, during this time window, we're not going to make big changes to the infra.
Yeah, and the push might be coming from somewhere else, not people on this call, and they might be release team saying, hey, we cannot accept this specific date for this specific release at this time. You're going to change, and so then we'll have to, rework the newer dates and get that going. So
yeah, and the other thing is the engineers at Kubernetes going to rope in are folks that have worked within the open source Kubernetes ecosystem. If they hear, hey, SIG release has code freeze, please don't make any changes. I mean, submit PRs, but they're not going to be reviewed for like 2 weeks. They're going to know what's going on.
Okay, so I think we can move on.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a living document. These dates are, of course, can be revised later. And I think once we finalize the design, we can refine this plan and adjust dates as necessary. The other phases I would like to maybe not talk about today, because Kubernetes is still getting up to speed on what has already been completed and what hasn't. And when they're able to really wrap their heads around what has been completed, what hasn't, where the conversations are with Fastly, what progress has been made on Equinix, et cetera, then we can come up with a much more useful phase 3 roadmap. Right now, it's very, very general and high level. It just says evaluate possible tooling. So we'll come back later after Kubernetes has had time to digest some of those other pieces. But again, welcome feedback. And if there are any high level feedback right now, happy to discuss.
I guess the main thing is like, how do we enable Kubernetes and folks who are coming in with all the things that we've already done? I think that'll be the most critical to, the successful start of this couple of projects the way I see it. So between II, Arno, me, Ben, I guess, like all the people on the call, we can already do asynchronous stuff on Slack, but if we need to, we can jump on a call to work out some stuff. But we can definitely use the time here in this meeting as well. So I'm open to all these variety of channels that are available to us to interact with each other. So please let us know what you need, and we can figure out who knows best, and we can pull them in.
Okay, I think a call would be tremendously helpful with the SIG leadership and Kubernetes and II. So I have posted in the Slack channel a doodle poll to see if we can find a time next week when we could all sync.
Thanks, Joanna.
Yeah, we value any input that we can get, and I think most of our folks are either at the Kubernetes Slack or at the CNCF Slack.
Yeah, let's try to use the existing K8s Infra channel, and if we need to spill over, we'll spill over. Because people are not there on one channel, we can go ping, do
Yeah.
whatever.
Totally
I feel
agree on this.
like I feel like if we're talking too much in the K8s Infra channel, we're doing something right.
I'm happy you're here, Jiffy. I'm really happy.
I'm happy to
Absolutely.
be here.
Okay. For the timeline, I think we good on that. We can follow up async. I think Ben, James, if anyone can answer to Doodle, Joanna Doodle, that would be great. Okay, so next thing, we have 10 minutes left. So next thing is EP, and after that I see Jiffy.
I'll try to be pretty quick here. We've gone through at the end of last year, trying to get to a point where we could apply the credits. And I think I worked a lot with Jay before he left to set up the Kubernetes org and move all of the many historical Kubernetes accounts that have been created over the years into one place so we can keep an eye on them. That we do need to migrate some of these. Some of these might be CI. I'm trying to identify which ones are tied in with email lists in case we need to reset the passwords, and also maybe get a list of the AWS accounts that SIG K8s Infra already has passwords for, so we don't have to worry about trying to deal with password management. To prioritize this list and probably coordinate with myself and Dims or Arnaud to prioritize and get a few of those over.
Yeah, Arnaud will know more than I have, like zero knowledge over the passwords. But if I can help any way, happy to.
Yeah, I'm gonna
For the
jump
most-
in a little bit. Yeah, since I've been a person who's been setting up all the CNCF Amazon infrastructure kind of like a few years ago. Happy to help you here. So just let me know if any kind of like the historical assistance is required from me.
But for the most part, the accounts that were added by Caleb and myself over the last year for registry K8s.io and things like that, I don't actually remember them being they're just member accounts under the AWS organization, right? So they don't require like a weird email confirmation process, and accounts don't have passwords, right? Only users do. So we just need to check whether the users that are associated with a particular account have password login enabled. Most of them should not. Most of them should just have an access key pair, like for the ones that are used for CI purposes.
I'm learning a lot.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure about those that are created for the CI purposes, but there are enough user-created Amazon accounts that are linked to the top-level organization account that should have some kind of the credentials except for the regular key.
One of the issues that we're going to experience for the ones that we don't just want to migrate and create new accounts for and may probably delete or disable is that in order for the AWS accounts to migrate from one organization to another, they need to be detached. And at that point, when they are detached, there is no way to authenticate to them unless they have password authentication. And so this is part of this difficulty in trying to ensure that at the same time that we detach them as quickly as possible, we authenticate with the password to accept the invitation to the new Kubernetes organization.
I have a question,
Yes.
if you don't mind. So when you've created these accounts, you should have created a root user, right? So
Yep,
that
you
should
have the root
live in a
user.
password safe somewhere along with an MFA token. So do you have those?
There's
There
a lot of
isn't necessarily
historical.
a root user for a member account.
Oh, no, you can create one. So that's the whole reason they force you to put an email in. So you can just reset it if you don't have access to one. If you didn't create one right away. So just do the password reset. You should get an email and then you should be able to generate a new password at that point.
If we look at the issue, there is a list of all of the email addresses associated with all of the accounts. And I've been going through trying to make sure that I or someone on this team has access to those emails for a password reset. And what I'm finding is some of those email addresses are not associated within the mailing list or are inaccessible and do contain infrastructure that we need to migrate.
Oh,
And so
that's in that case, then you can either create a mailing list for it or create a temporary G Suite account for them and receive the emails and then change it at a later date.
Yep. That's what
Yeah,
we'll,
folks,
go ahead.
we have 5 minutes left before, so there's like last question for so the one thing we can do here about this issue, like we don't need to migrate all of this account. We don't really need to migrate all of them. So there's no rush in doing the migration. I don't really necessarily see a huge benefit on doing that. We can recreate those accounts from the new organization if needed and work with the different SIG to see how we can move the different pouch up. So I put the link of the only account we care about right now, and we need to ensure the migration, because the rest is just account for CI we can easily recreate under the new organization. That's what Matt made mention in one comment. So there might be some benefit to do.
That was actually my suggestion as well. So since we're speaking about the accounts that they use solely for the CI purpose, and I believe they don't contain any kind of unique and sensitive data, I believe it would be pretty easy to migrate the workloads, but not the accounts themselves. So we can consider an option of just recreating the new accounts and migrating the workloads.
Yeah, I think that's basically it's like worst case scenario. We just recreate the account and do the migration. So we need to talk to K8s team and SIG cluster lifecycle about how we can try to either initiate migration to new account or see what we can do, because we also first need to address the billing situation, because currently it's one, I don't know, there's one credit card, but I don't know if it's CNCF or a personal credit card in the new org. We need to address that first, ensure if we do the migration and we detach the account, we need to be able to fill in billing payment information. So my priority would be the account where we have critical workloads like registry.ts.io or different S3 bucket we care about, and we can think about what is that list? Yeah. We can take a look later at the other account used for CI. So we don't have to migrate everything at once, especially there's an hard limit on migration, because you have to, the limit is like you only can send 20 invitations per day. So ultimately we need to do wave of migration at some point. So that's going to be basically, I think that's the most safe thing to do.
For those accounts that you've got in that list, do we have all of the passwords for those?
We can reset them. That's most of them. We can reset them because they are basically attached to the same. They are alias to one mailing list, so we can resend them. I can take a look later. But my priority would be basically the track account I mentioned here. That's my priority. And I think Jay have access to 2 of them, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so we can try to basically do that manually first, those 3 accounts, and then figure out how we can migrate the CI account.
Okay.
Can I slip in? Because I'm going to have to leave in a minute too.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to calendar snipe several of you over the next couple of weeks, because I want to get spun up faster. And I also have a bunch of specific questions that probably don't need to be in the full K8s Infra meeting. It's really just making sure my brain is up to date. So keep that in mind. For example, I do want a history lesson But yeah, that doesn't have to take up the whole meeting. Another thing
Oh,
that I would personally,
I would also join on those history lessons. So
yeah, that's probably a good
just
idea.
include me.
The other thing is, I think what I would love is for the next meeting, we make sure that the timeline that was proposed has actually been kind of looked at. Feedback has been welcomed, so to speak, but also let's start looking at like there's the registry.k8s.io board. Let's start trying to figure out what action items we can actually kind of start tackling. I'm gonna be aggressive about all of this.
I'm gonna appoint you as PM and TPM. I think that's what you want.
I don't know about that, but cheerleader, aggressive cheerleader.
Okay.
All right.
We wish 11 p.m. for me, so I think we can stop here and try to follow up async on Slack. If there is like any question, feel free to drop them on Slack or ping me.
Thank you,
So
buddy.
I'll answer that some other time, GV. This is actually the main reason that I'm attending. I don't know that I'll be doing a lot of K8s Infra this year, but I want to make sure that I'm around to pass along context on everything, and also from the SIG testing point of view, though I am also working on getting other people in charge of that.
Love you, Ben. Okay, I really gotta go.
okay, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Great to
Bye.
see you. Well.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Fun, thanks.